So I went ahead and quartered the onions already. We're just gonna drop them in here, one by one. Pretty simple. And the nice thing is, this little container will hold 2 of the small onions. So as you know, I used my little Ninja chopper, and my onions are nice and small, and I was not bawling like a baby while I was cutting them like I usually do. So these are ready now to add to the bacon. Next thing we're going to do is take our bacon and cut it into what we call lardons. It's actually a fancy name for little tiny bacon bits. Basically, I'm going to keep the bacon together as it came out of the package and just start slicing little small pieces. And it's easier, in my opinion, to do this before I fry it up than to try to break it, because if you try to do it once it's fried, the pieces really are not very uniform when you break them up. So we're going to let the bacon cook down for probably about 5 minutes. And want to start to get a little bit brown, but not too much, because I have to add the onions to it. And it's okay leaving all the bacon grease in the pan, because we're going to use that to cook. We're also going to use it for flavor. Okay, time to add the onions. Here we go. So again, this is 2 small onions, minced up nicely in our little Ninja. And we're going to let them go also about another 2 to 3 minutes just to get a little more brown. And then we're going to add in our spinach. So while I'm waiting for the onions, garlic, and bacon to finish cooking, we're gonna go ahead and get to the most important part of this recipe, which is to drain the water out of the spinach. So I have my spinach that's been sitting in a colander for about an hour, and you can see there is a lot of moisture in it. So what you wanna do is take it, and I don't bother using a cheesecloth, I just use my standard So first we're going to add our spinach that we just drained all the moisture out of, hopefully, as much as we could get out. I'm going to stir that up. Then we're going to add in our cream cheese and our heavy cream. So I'm just breaking the spinach up again. And let the pan heat back up. Okay, so you can see that the cream cheese has started to melt nicely. Now I'm going to add in the heavy cream. And I use both. I use the cream cheese for a little bit of thickness, but I really use the heavy cream, and I always have, just to add a little bit of richness and, I don't know, just that delicious texture of heavy cream. My mother, when she used to make this, she would sometimes make a white sauce. I don't like that because then it gets a little too floury. I just like I said, the texture and flavor of the cream cheese and the heavy cream. And then we'll move on to our toppings. So I'm using half a cup of heavy cream. And I mostly start with half a cup because I want to see how much is left and how much is absorbed. I don't want this still to be totally green, and I don't want it too white, if that makes any sense at all. So I ended up adding back in an extra quarter cup of heavy cream, and to me, this is the perfect color. Not too white, not too green. Now we're going to add in our spices. We did about 6 little turns of our salt grinder, and then we added about a teaspoon of pepper, and now we're going to go in with the wonderful nutmeg. As I mentioned to you all, my great-grandfather was a pastry chef out of Germany, and nutmeg is one of the spices that he always used in most of his sauces that had to do with vegetables. He would always have a touch of nutmeg, or even up to half a teaspoon or a teaspoon of nutmeg, which I thought initially was rather strange, but when you taste the flavor, it really is delicious. So I'm going to go pretty close to the top on each one. I'm not going to take it all the way up because don't forget we have our breadcrumb topping. But we'll get close enough. So for each bowl, I'm going to do about 2 tablespoons of the pork rind. So for these, we're going to need about 6 tablespoons. And the pork rind panko is extremely light, very, very light actually. So we're just gonna, you can see the heaping tablespoons of it here. We're just gonna go ahead and do our 6 tablespoons. We have 3 ramekins, only 3 of us are eating this, and hopefully I'll have leftovers for me. To this, we're gonna add just a little bit of butter, about 2 tablespoons, so that when it's cooking and baking in the oven, or I should say baking in the oven, it's gonna get a nice brown top to it. So the butter's nice and soft, and what I'm doing is just using the edge of a knife to kind of chop it up a little bit. Just want to kind of get it interspersed between the pork rind panko. So here's our finished product, fresh out of the oven, with the panko pork rind breadcrumbs on the top and our creamed spinach underneath. Absolutely delicious.